Ever since I was a kid, I've always wanted to make my own games. This video may seem similar to a previous one I did about Dog Plush a little bit ago, but that video was more of a letter to the Blush Crunch team in hopes that they fix a problem I saw with the game, while this one is just me asking myself, okay, how would I fix the currently nerfed Bone Trinket? Whenever I'm learning something like a new game engine, there's a certain trick I like to do that I think helps me learn faster. I could try to make something simple, but I think it's easier to actually do something I'm familiar with. For example, when I first started learning Unreal Engine, one of the first things I did was I recreated the FNAF 4 gameplay in Unreal Engine. Because I'm very familiar with FNAF 4, I was never lost on what I should do, I just had to look up how to do it. And for Roblox Studio, I'm doing a similar thing, but I went a little further with it. I could have just recreated Dog Plush, haha, or Speedy Shoes or some other easy trinket, right? But instead, I wanted to ask myself, how would I fix the currently nerfed Bone Trinket? How it used to work is you could infinitely stack the speed it gave you, but when Dial came out, people started using macros to be faster than even him, and they fixed that by just capping the speed that Bone gives you. So if I have Bone Trinket, obviously I'm Bassy and I have these 4 inventory slots here. I can also press F to activate or deactivate my ability, but because I'm not holding anything, then it won't drop anything. So if I come over here, these are candies, by the way. If I pick up these candies, then they go in the earliest open inventory slot. And if you'll notice these 2 numbers over here, the top number is my speed modifier, and the bottom number is my actual speed that I'm moving. So if I hold shift, I can start sprinting, which adds 10 to your speed, no matter which character you are. Something else I did is I made it so you can actually eat the speed candy, and it works like it does in the game. It doesn't change the modifier, but that's for a reason I'll explain later. Now let's get to the actual trinket stuff. So if I drop 4 pieces of candy and then pick them up, my speed is around 40, and I can make it 50 if I start sprinting. However, if I drop multiple times, you can start going pretty fast. I'm going to go ahead on record and say I haven't actually used any gameplay macros in Dandy's World, but if I turn on my macro, you'll notice, yeah, you do gain a little bit. Oh, that's the, okay, it's not 500. Hold on, let me turn off eating candy. If you do use a macro, yeah, you can get some pretty fast speeds. That's, I think Dial is around 40? So yeah, getting into the hundreds just by holding a button, that is pretty crazy, I won't lie. So, what did they do? Well, what Blush Crunch did is they capped the amount of speed you can get. So even in normal gameplay, I'm going to fumble because I'm nervous, but I'm going to do the thing I did before, and you'll notice it's not going past 40 anymore. I've used a little bit of the wiki and the stats menu in-game to help me out here, but I'm pretty sure this is how they did it. They literally just made it so you don't get any speed anymore if you're at the cap. What I did do in my game, and how I assume it works in Dandy's World as well, is there's a separate modifier for when you do something like eat speed candy. So even if you're at the cap, you can still eat speed. I have to turn it back on, and you can still eat speed candy and get a little faster than what the cap will let you do. So I made toggles for before and after the nerf, but how did I fix it? Well, if I toggle it one more time, you'll see my speed turns green, and I can start dropping and picking up candy again, and it's not capped anymore. I can still get above 40. However, if I activate my macro, you'll see it turns red, and I'm no longer getting the speed from using the Bone Trinket. But what I can still get the speed for is eating candy. You'll no longer be able to get the speed from the Bone Trinket, however, it will eventually turn back to green and you can do it again. It takes longer to undo the prevention the longer you try to use a macro, but you could easily fix that by just capping the prevention or making it a short timer or something. The code for all of this to work isn't that complicated, but the stuff you have to do is varied enough. I think it was a pretty good stepping stone for learning Roblox Studio. So for the normal Bone Trinket, I just have 2 variables here that increase by 25% every time it's activated. And they're 2 separate ones doing the same thing just because I think it's more organized. to have the speed boost from Bone Trinket separate from your actual speed modifier. It's not used in this version of Bone Trinket, they both do the same thing, but as you'll see later, it does help with organization, and I think that was the right call here. It then waits 4 seconds, which is the normal Bone Trinket timer, and then it just minuses the speed it gives you. And these two lines are just a remote event making sure that the player's machine is seeing the same speed as the server. All that's doing is syncing those two. And this task.spawn here is just running the function separately, ensuring that every instance of you picking up an individual item is lowering and adding the speed you're getting individually from all the other items, which is just making it cleaner because you don't want to add and subtract math like that layering on top of each other. You want it to be separate so they don't get in each other's way. That was probably a very bad way of explaining it, but I'm just yapping at this point. So for capped Bone Trinket, it's literally the exact same code, but if the speed you get from Bone is ever 40 or higher, then it just doesn't give you the speed bonus. That's why these two are separate, because, for example, if you're eating speed candy, you still want to get the speed boost from stuff that isn't the Bone Trinket, but this ensures if you are trying to get speed from Bone, then it's capped at 40. Now, the macro detection is a little more involved, but again, it was nothing too crazy. So here, every frame, it's checking how many times you've pressed the ability button. You could probably lower this from every frame. That's probably overkill. You could do like a half-second timer, 0.2-second timer, 1-second timer. You know, it could be literally anything. It doesn't have to be frames. If that ends up being too much, then you can dial it down a little bit. No pun intended. But if your ability uses, which is just you pressing F, is ever equal or higher than 8, and if you're able to use Bone at the moment, then it'll disable your ability to use Bone. And now the speed boost part is basically the same as before, but it's checking if you can use Bone, which is changed up here. And then that's the same, that's the same. And this is just a timer that's counting down constantly as long as you have Bone Trinket. It randomizes the timer because, again, we're dealing with macros. There's a possibility that they just make a macro that perfectly avoids the detection by the second. Randomizing the time basically makes it impossible for a macro to avoid it. Now, the next obvious step from client-side macro detection would be server-side macro detection. But I figured it was just going to be the same as the client detection, but I put it on the server. So instead of just doing that again, instead what I did is something that's been running in the background this entire time. If I come over to players and I change my speed modifier to something generous like 20, you'll see my speed shoot up, but then it'll return to normal. And it'll say in the console that my speed was 400 when it was expected to be 20. That's because I added server-side anti-cheat, which took way much longer than it should have. For reasons that I hope are obvious, I'm not going to show the code for this one, but it doesn't matter how fast you go, even if it's just a little bit, you know? Like, that would add up, right? Yeah, like, even if it's just a little bit. If you're cheating even a little bit, then it'll detect it and set your speed back to normal. What I also did is I made sure it works through latency as well, because how it works is the player's machine calculates their speed, and then the server also calculates your speed, and if those numbers are ever different, then it thinks something's up. Well, that can happen even through just ping, right? That can happen through your game lagging, so I accounted for that as well, and false positives are not very common at all, which I'm very proud of. But even any false positive is work to be done, so I don't exactly consider this finished, but it does work pretty well, and as far as I saw, it didn't do anything during the actual video, which is pretty cool. I'm glad I managed to do a little bit of anti-cheat as well. And that's basically it. I do hope that they do something like this, because I do miss jump scaring my friends with Bone Trinket. I hope Dandy's World adds just macro detection like this instead of just capping it. But even then, this was pretty fun to do. I'm glad I got to mess around with Roblox Studio a little bit, and I'm hoping to do it a little more. Now that this little project is over, I feel like I have the freedom now to just kind of mess around and do whatever I want, so hopefully something really cool is coming in the future. But other than that, thank you for watching, and remember, keep gambling.